This crocodile grows horns, but is a variant of the deceit god. It is with others preparing to confront the evil monster in the universe. It is created from the water form in reality, with the shape of a huge black storm. In his eyes, all gods become small. Loki chained his girlfriend and then ran down his pants. He wanted to distract the monster so that she could use the ability to manipulate psychologically. Whether they are successful or will become a person, then invite people to come to 2 parts Loki Full HD today. In the 31st century, there was a talented scientist. He discovered that there were universes that arrange deep into his universe. The existence of the multiverse is also known by other variants. All have tried to contact and meet, talking about knowledge as well as technology to build each other's world to become better. However, no variant in his multiverse is good and has kindness. Some bad variants are greedy and want to invade other universes, leading to the war between the multiverse. It seemed that the multiverse war would wipe out everything, but then one of the variants of this scientist found Alioth, an organism created from all water writing in reality with the ability to spend time and infinite space. As a result, he exploited its strength and weapon, using this organism to end the multiverse war and turn the timeline back into a single line. From here, to be able to control time as he likes, this scientist erected the image of the puppet timekeepers to run the long-term management agency referred to as TVA. All employees here are abducted and brainwashed variants so that they think that they have been created by the puppet timekeepers, thereby loyal to TVA unconditionally. TVA works with a single principle: maintain the stability of the sacred timeline by making individuals go different from the path that the timekeepers outlined. Therefore, these variants cannot create fluttering events, causing branching time, preventing the multiverse war from breaking out again. As for the scientist himself, after all of this, he called himself He Who Remains and decided to stay in a castle at the end of time, silently controlling the puppet timekeepers, continuing to maintain the order of time for many millennia. Immediately after the battle that Loki caused in the year 2012 in New York, his story was rewritten again, when luckily with the Space Stone, Tony Stark carelessly dropped. However, this action of the trickster god has gone out of the sacred timeline, so TVA soldiers immediately came and arrested him to bring him back to trial. Here, Loki tried to justify that the Avengers traveling time should be worth arresting, but Judge Ravonna Renslayer asserted that it would have to happen in the secret timeline, and Loki escaping would not. Therefore, he was immediately sentenced. At that moment, a high-level TVA agent called Mobius appeared. He negotiated with the judge to borrow Loki for a while to help solve a difficult variant being rebellious in many different times. When he came to Mobius's office, Loki saw his entire journey throughout time, from past things to the future. He had to witness the death of his parents. Then, when he just made up with Thor, it had not been long, then he was killed by Thanos and died in his brother's arms. Even though Loki still thought that TVA was a drama, he decided to escape. Then, when they find the block of armor, he found that his magic, as well as the power of all Infinity Stones, were useless here. Finally, Loki also realized how formidable TVA is, and returned to help Mobius. Here, he also revealed the problem that TVA is facing, which is another variant of Loki who defected and lies all over the timelines and kills many TVA employees. Meanwhile, some TVA employees following the trace of the variant to Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 1985. But this dangerous variant has set traps and quickly defeated all, stealing devices to consider the time, and the tempad that can open the travel gate anywhere. Before he left, he also kidnapped one of the soldiers named C-20. Loki and Mobius and another group of soldiers who also came soon after quickly reset the time there to prune the new branch. Here, Loki was very fluttering with Mobius to be able to meet the timekeepers. That's why he was almost eliminated by Ravonna from the game, but Mobius advised her to give this one a chance. Loki himself later relied on TVA's documents, which found his way to the apocalypses, hiding from the organization's monitoring. It turned out that the person would translate to the end of the world, such as the end of the world Ragnarok on Asgard. Even if there are 10 strong men there, he could not save Asgard. Therefore, no matter what the variant does here, it does not affect the results of the time. Since then, the time does not branch, making him hide from TVA's monitoring easily. After Loki and Mobius verified that, both of them and the group of soldiers translated to one of the other ends of the world, which they deduced the other variant would hide there. The location is Alabama, a beach that was about to be hit by a huge storm in 2050. As expected, the dangerous variant was hiding here. It fascinated a soldier with B-15 code, and a number of civilians in the surrounding area attacked Loki. After a reckless fight, the variant was revealed as a female version. She actually was arrested by TVA from a very young age, but luckily escaped, having stolen many TemPads from Ravonna. Since then, she has had to live away from TVA to be able to survive until now. After rejecting the cooperation offer of Loki, she activated the specialized blocks to reset the time using time writing. The TemPad that had been robbed from the previous TVA soldiers, making the timeline so easy to be controlled. Then she moved to TVA with the one TemPad. Loki had previously used hypnosis to find the position of the timekeepers from C-20 soldiers. Following her, we can see outside magic. She can also fight timekeepers with extremely skillful melee skills. Our Loki guy also chased right after and blocked Lady Loki before she could go deeper inside. When both were fighting, Ravonna suddenly appeared, causing Loki to use the one TemPad to take both of them from TVA. They accidentally moved to Lamentis 1 planet in 2077, which was about to face an extremely bad apocalypse event. At this point, Lady Loki revealed that she hated Loki's name and used the Sylvie name instead. The TemPad was hidden by Loki, but it had run out of energy, so both of them reluctantly cooperated to find a battery recharging for it. After a while of searching, they decided to jump on a ship evacuating people here, in the hope of finding a place to charge the one TemPad. The couple had a few short minutes to ask about each other's past and gradually became closer. However, Loki then lied, causing the guards to pay attention, and they were thrown out of the train. Sylvie, because of the TemPad, also jumped right away, but then the TemPad was seriously damaged by Loki's carelessness. The two did not want to die on this planet, so they continued to find another ship to escape. On the way, they talked to each other about many things, in which Sylvie revealed that TVA's employees are actually variants, rather than being created by the timekeepers. Because before that, she saw Hunter C-20's memory about a normal life he used to have on Earth. Not long after, they had to face another event. The remaining evacuation ship that the two were searching for had been destroyed, and the Lamentis planet is about to be completely destroyed. Feeling that there was no more escape, the two sat down to confide and accidentally grew fond of each other. And TVA, after resetting all the time of the previous branch, suddenly discovered the extremely special event created by Loki and Sylvie in Lamentis, immediately came there and captured the two people. Loki was locked by Mobius in a time loop and was interrogated extremely brutally by Ravonna. Sylvie was isolated in another room, but then she was approached by Hunter B-15 and brought to Alabama. It turned out that before, when hypnotized, B-15 briefly saw the memories of his life before being abducted by TVA and having to work under the control of timekeepers. Here, Sylvie confirmed the truth that B-15 is also just a variant, and TVA is deceiving everyone. Meanwhile, Mobius was also told by Loki, so he personally went to verify at Ravonna's office. Mobius successfully swapped a TemPad with her, and through that knew that Hunter C-20, who was abducted by Sylvie before, knew the truth about TVA and was erased by Ravonna. After knowing the truth, Mobius immediately got Loki out of the time loop to solve this. But as soon as the two had just stepped out, Ravonna waited there, and just then the army erased the existence of Mobius. Next, Ravonna escorted Loki and Sylvie to the audience of the timekeepers, where they were deemed safe. Just before the two were reset, Hunter B-15 broke in to liberate them. After Loki and Sylvie defeated all TVA's employees, they suddenly discovered the timekeepers are just fakes. Just before Loki is going to say something to Sylvie, he was suddenly pruned by Ravonna. Sylvie quickly robbed Ravonna's pruning weapon and started to interrogate her. On the side of Loki, he still did not die, because the people who were pruned by TVA would be taken to the Void, a place in the true literal sense, a place outside without time. And here, Loki encountered some of his other variants. Identified as Kid Loki, who caused the Nexus event, killed Thor. Classic Loki, with the event survived when tricking Thanos, but was arrested after a long time of separation and wanting to return to his homeland. Crocodile Loki, the cat's wrong cat, and finally boastful Loki, with the mouth of the flower that always bragged that he had defeated the Avengers, even had Infinity Stones, so he didn't know what the Nexus event actually was. Returning to TVA, while Sylvie learned about TVA, Ravonna and Miss Minutes learned that those who are pruned will not be able to return because Alioth is guarding there, which is the creature at the top of the video. Partly to save Loki, and partly to find the one behind the timekeepers, Sylvie brought a tempad and pruned herself. She fell into the void and was immediately chased by Alioth. Unexpectedly, Mobius came from where the car was, and the two were lucky to escape. Ravonna then was also quite confused, because apart from belief in the timekeepers, she did not know who created this place. As for Loki, after being taken by the variants to a hidden basement to escape from Alioth, he tried to persuade them, but no one would cooperate. They think that facing Alioth is suicide, so he opened the door himself. However, everything became complicated. When Loki accidentally led his other variants, everything suddenly became confused. All met and immediately broke out a battle for the throne in the basement. Loki and Classic Loki, Kid Loki and Crocodile Loki, when the whole crowd was chaotic, escaped. The whole assembly immediately caught Sylvie. Mobius tried to escape all the way. At this time, Sylvie's plan is to find a way to approach Alioth to find out the truth behind the voice, as well as TVA. The two then determined to do it together, and Mobius, remembering the tempad that Sylvie brought, used it to return to TVA. Sylvie's plan was not successful when Alioth was too strong. Luckily, thanks to the help of Classic Loki, when he alone created an illusion of the giant Asgard castle, Alioth was distracted, and he sacrificed so that the couple Loki and Sylvie successfully enchanted the monster. As a result, a strange castle opened before their eyes. At the end of time, Loki and Sylvie go inside and once again met Miss Minutes. They heard her proposing that the person behind all could help both of them have a dream life. This proposal would be effective for others, but Sylvie and Loki are still awake. In the end, the talented couple was about to be faced with TVA, and also the creator of the Timekeepers. He was He Who Remains at the beginning of the video he introduced. He began to explain all the things related to time, its operation, as well as the process of creating TVA, and the importance of this job. He lamented that he was too tired to rule the sacred timeline in the Citadel, so he lived for thousands of lives to find the right successor, and the most suitable, it was two people. Hearing this, while Loki still bloomed half-hearted, Sylvie was filled with hatred, because TVA had taken everything that made her live until now. She did not believe the warnings of He Who Remains, that when killing him, the endless versions of his evil variants would appear and make the multiverse war break out again. After a hot kiss with Loki, Sylvie pushed him back to TVA and then stabbed He Who Remains to death, causing chaos, causing the branching events to continue the branching timelines. On Loki's side, TVA that he was pushed back by Sylvie was not TVA in the familiar time stream anymore, but it was under the direct control of a certain variant of He Who Remains, not under the image of the Almighty Keepers. Out of Season 1, invited the whole family to Season 2. The trickster god was facing his own nature. In order to protect a great scientist of the world, both stood at each other and used martial arts with the opponent. Looking for a long time to love each other, they were with their energy. Strong force touched each other, making the couple fly high. The timelines are at risk of being destroyed. Whether the God of Mischief specializes in tricking this time has played the main role of success. Invite people to come to the new Loki movie released in 2023 today. After stealing the Tesseract in the events of Avengers Endgame, a version of the Loki variant was taken to TVA, the bureaucratic organization that exists outside of time and space, tasked with time monitoring. Loki ran away and was chased by Agent Mobius, falling into the road with him to drop himself on a flying taxi. The driver was startled until she came back to see the statue right before her eyes. Despite trying to turn the car, the collision still happened. The two rushed into a nearby building. Loki stood up super scarred and tried to get acquainted and pretended to be fine. However, no one is known here. Casey shouted at someone who broke in. Loki's body suddenly distorted and moved to the future. Here, Casey realized the God of Mischief. Looking at the crack on Loki's floor firmly, he just traveled to the past. Casey led Loki to find Mobius and B-15. However, a few steps turned around, Mr. Than lost the picture. The timeline continues to branch. Currently, no one can think of this problem. Casey told Mobius he just saw Loki. He brought position to check. There was no signal. They just arrived at the Loki war room. Casey from time to time was threatened to fear the heart. Loki chased Mobius, but just opened his mouth to disappear. For a while, the clouds went back to the wind, causing Loki to be tired. He entered the war room, but no one was there. Due to curiosity, Mr. Than opened the radio to listen. But until now, there is only Ho Quin Hung's bewildered song. Next is the wild dance. He reeled in vague. In reality, it is divided into two factions. B-15 does not want to destroy branching time because she thinks there are lives there and they deserve to exist. B-15 confirms a prerequisite. TVA must change, and it must change immediately. With arguments and a tone harder than his evidence, she persuaded her to lead. The pruning order was immediately executed. At that moment, the God of Mischief appeared. Loki robbed the weapons of X5 and then shot the pruning baton into the wall. Show everyone the portrait of the person who created this place. He is the culprit that robs our lives. Mobius tries to fight Loki, calmed down from something, then gently said, "You are the god that keeps it all together." Everything chaotic, no one knows what is going on. X5 was sent to search for Sylvie, another form of Loki. The general said that she was the reason why the situation was chaotic. Loki is still breathing at this time. Mr. Tiet told Mobius that he had arrived at the end of time. The God of Mischief affirmed that the war was approaching. The fast pruning of the time should have been enforced because only that prevented him from creating many branches. He is here as Victor Timely. He was the one who built this place. Mobius feels unreasonable why he doesn't remember anything. Loki immediately told him they erased his memories. Mobius still felt that Loki's butt was distorted in front of him. Mr. Than explained that he had just returned from the past. By this time, Mobius has believed somewhat in the words of the God of Mischief. He intended to call Miss Minutes for help. However, Loki stopped because she was not trustworthy, because she was there with He Who Remains at the end of time. Hearing this, Mobius and Loki immediately went to the hospital to visit. What to do in the immediate future is to prevent the variant from escaping. They go to the improvement and repair area together. 400 years to meet Mobius again, OB feels very happy. They talked a few sentences, Loki disappeared again. Surprisingly, OB knew about a time slipping, but he couldn't understand why it could happen in TVA. Loki about the past talked to OB there. Wherever he said, OB recalled there. In the end, the machine to fix the problem was born. However, this is very adventurous. Mobius must help Loki with his life. If he fails, he will be boiled by time. That has not been eaten by Loki to do. Mr. Than had to tear himself from all time strands. The two were debating when the light suddenly blinked. Seeing OB surprised, Mobius immediately said this happened for a long time. Thinking for a while, OB came to the conclusion. Due to the branching time on the loom, the temporal loom is overloaded. OB thinks that it is necessary to prune the time before it's too late. However, B-15 protested, a year, because it is to erase countless people. Facing that situation, OB was forced to close the blast doors to protect TVA, while seeking to improve the temporal loom so that it can withstand pressure. Once that door closed, TVA will not be able to resync with Loki. So now Mr. Loki must prune himself immediately to avoid jumping to the past. Loki heard that sweating. OB brought the timer to be synchronized with the temporal loom. Loki will have to prune himself as soon as the light changes blue. Just 1 minute will take a mile. If too late, Loki will get lost in time forever. The bearing glass suddenly broke. Instead of a Loki and Mobius, sounds only have 5 minutes of preparation. No more meat discussed, Loki slipped from reality. Loki holds a timer to monitor signal lights. Mobius was protected by OB. He panicked when he saw the crack on the oxygen mask. The time of folding too. OB only had to fry the tape temporarily, left everything for Destiny to arrange. Mobius took the gun across the door. His steps were extremely heavy at no time pressure. Meet a small axis, but Mobius also successfully fired. OB opened the countdown switch for 30 seconds before closing the blast doors. Loki is still wandering in the future. Mobius asked for more time, but OB could not buy any more time. Avoiding the blast, Mobius just turned away to run to the door. At this moment, Loki turned on the self-destruct mode. Mr. Than's body was pushed back. Just please help Mobius and faster. No delay, the two go to find Sylvie. The first place they set foot is London, year 1977, on the sacred timeline. The two came to see a person named Brad Wolfe. As soon as he could say a few sentences, he played cards. B-15 is available outside the attack. Brad ran to get people, but still could not escape the pursuit of Mobius. He also respected himself, but the god of tricks did not. Loki arrived was an attack. Brad splashed 15 meters away. He immediately stood up and ran to catch his neck on his neck. However, the number stuffed into the dead alley. However, Loki has not controlled meat. X5 used the device to move from there a quite far distance. However, playing magic with the god is not again. X5 was quickly closed by Loki. After that, create a tight ball on the wall. Soon he was reminded of the base. Because they refused to cooperate, they temporarily went to the prison home. Loki and Mobius come to see OB. The guy is still grimly repairing the temporal loom, so they had to ask X5 directly about the tempad. Instead of answering, X5 said he was all God. He told Loki to stop making the cow. He was born to be a villain. Therefore, the role of a heavy hero smells not smelled. Loki had to breathe a long breath, but Mobius himself has endured. He unexpectedly buried his mouth X5, causing Loki to run to stop him, then take him out to leave the cell. To help Mobius, Loki led him to the cafeteria. After making a piece of tea and drink, Mr. Than asked, "You have never been curious about the time I live, about my life before being arrested?" However, Mobius thinks this is the only life he knows, so he didn't think anywhere else. Marking on that on the side, they returned to the theme of X5. Mobius said he was a talented hunter. Therefore, it is likely that X5 has been found before by Sylvie. However, released her because he wanted to continue enjoying her life on the timeline. Mobius is helpless in making X5 try it. However, he believed in Loki because he was dubbed the Fool. The two returned to the cell without B-15. They pushed into a machine that made X5 look a bit. Loki pretended to forget to control Mobius out. Then suddenly he closed the door and locked him. Mobius stood on the door and looked worried. Loki, the role of the villain, is crazy. He used an X5 control panel to a cube, then pressed the button for it to narrow. X5 at this time fear of pissing pants. As long as the cube forced him, he would fly immediately. However, X5 still does not know where Dox and others are. Loki does not believe, continuously miniaturizing cubes. No more, X5 declared the truth. Sylvie had a new life, just waiting. Mobius went to the room down the drama. He escorted X5 to the time Sylvie is in. Go. X5 told her to stay inside. However, he did not dare to come in for fear of Sylvie burying him for the mine. The atmosphere became tense when the two beings met. Loki asked to talk privately, and Sylvie agreed to meet after work. Loki explained that he came here not to cause trouble, that indeed there is a stretching that is about to happen. Mr. Thon revealed that he was dragged to the past and then to the future. When TVA was in distress, he saw Sylvie there. However, she didn't know what to do because it happened in the future that she is now a cake seller. Loki immediately asked Sylvie to use magic on himself. From there, Sylvie can see what he has seen. But Sylvie does not want to be related. Moreover, she did not find an eel. Mobius must force X5 to clear the problem. While he was still faltering, Sylvie made magic. She learned that General Dox tried to prune all the time branches. Billions of people kept erased without feeling. 30% of branches have completely disappeared. B-15 urged Mobius to quickly act. Loki and Sylvie holding each other amid a source of energy, very large, blowing away everything blocking the way. Dox was arrested, but it seemed that the situation was still tight. B-15 called them to the headquarters. They all stood at the last branches that were gradually fading. Before his world was destroyed, Sylvie decided to return. Sitting in the hood, she shortly yawned. Sadness when thinking about this place is about to be erased. The next day, Ravonna arrived on the sacred timeline in 1982. In 1982, she was instructed by a ghost clock to let the book guide TVA in the opposite house window. That is the plan of the Misser to save the timelines. Inside, there is a black boy. It seems that many of the natural Thontian lacks. At TVA headquarters, people are all sweating. OB, running back and forth, still cannot make a stable temporal loom. Time branches due to Dox pruning are now rising again. Just a little bit more, everything will explode. Loki and Mobius have to set out to find Miss Minutes. She is the administrator of TVA, hoping to have a way. The search was deadlocked when the boy sold the newspaper passing by. Hearing Mobius delivered a sheet. As expected, there is a Victor Timely. Entering a building, Loki was startled when he realized Victor Timely. He was fluttering with his hands and feet, talking about his achievements, promising to light the whole city Chicago, then provide energy for the whole planet. Somehow, he has the temporal loom. Mobius came up with the idea of bringing him to the headquarters. Loki was about to chase after the fat name. Annoyed by the god, Victor flicked his hand to let him fly. Going out, they clashed with Renslayer. She is also trying to bring Victor Timely to the team because, in the future, this guy is the misser. But it seems that this guy is not very capable. Victor Timely's inventions are only fraud. Investors get down before knowing they have been fooled. Everything was lying when Sylvie suddenly came. She wants Victor Timely eliminated to prevent the danger later. Loki must stand out to protect him because the urgent thing in the immediate future is that TVA is about to be destroyed. Sylvie understands that the misser has planned everything. This man is now innocent, but then he will become him. Right from Renslayer gave Victor Timely the TVA book, and now Loki takes him to the headquarters. All is in the calculation. Everyone has their own reason. If they could not find a common voice, they had to fight. The strength is equal, so they fly by distance. Renslayer now opened the bag for Miss Minutes to come out. Seeing the ghost clock appear, people running away in chaos. Take that opportunity, Renslayer took Victor Timely gambling. When she arrived safely, she revealed it. Victor Timely knows everything, that his future self created TVA, then was killed by 2 Nordictions. However, that person has created time branches to return. Such an unreasonable story. Victor Timely did not show surprise because in his control, he often imagined it. Ravonna also wants to repair the temporal loom to stabilize TVA. However, she did not believe the god of tricks and led Victor Timely to flee. Outside, there is the sound of the arrow. Victor Timely hurriedly took the bag through the window. The mental prototype of his temporal loom is lying in the lab. Loki and Mobius chased but could not find the target because Victor Timely is very knowledgeable about this terrain. Fleeing, he was very fast. The Ravonna group then took a boat to leave the city. Victor Timely took out the notebook about the day he found it. At this point, Ravonna confessed that she did it. Victor Timely was happy to thank her for showing him the light needed to pursue. The ideas of Victor Timely have been extremely great, just because reality conditions do not allow him to complete them. Half a life must always run away when he is considered a crook. Ravonna felt that this man would become a great man. She wholeheartedly wants to cooperate for a long time. Those who suspected midnight were sleeping. Ravonna was thrown straight into the lifeboat. Victor Timely stood on the boat waving to greet, cordially. She hurried climbed after. The next morning, Victor Timely went to the lab. He cleaned to TVA, but the clock brought back. It advised Victor Timely to hide for a while. Now that the first appeared, he would be killed like a meal. It turned out that Miss Minutes here was to implement the owner's plan. The misser created Miss Minutes before both TVA and the multiverse war. The chaos broke out when Ravonna came to the place. Sylvie and Loki's group were also quickly present. The chaos took place briefly. Sylvie had his blade in front of Victor Timely. However, she hesitated when she got down because Victor Timely is asking for the sincerity of a scientist. He just wants to dedicate with his inventions. I am definitely not the one you think. I can decide what myself will do. Sylvie agreed to let Loki and Mobius give Victor Timely to TVA. As for himself, he resolved resentment with Ravonna. One of the abdomen and a beat, Ravonna flew over the door of the time. She was taken to the missing surrounded. Miss Minutes let Ravonna review a conversation before, letting her know the true face of the misser. He deployed the 4-2 protocol, delete Ravonna's memories and all others. Ravonna felt extremely angry to know that she was just a tool for the misser to keep control. The ghost clock now pumped the ass. It thinks that they may never need their owners. Victor Timely was present at TVA. After a few deceptions, he no longer believes anyone until he sees your temporal loom. The new Victor Timely calmed down. Loki also gently convinced that only he could fix it. Looking at everything around, Victor Timely's heart is extremely excited. He could not believe he had built this place. Mobius must urge Victor Timely that there is no time to see the meaning. That person is him, but not now. Stop repairing a fast temporal loom is not to be comprehensive. Victor Timely and OB meet each other very happy. They do not live in the same time, but both admire the opponent. The urgent time forced them to quickly finish. OB explained to everyone how to fix the temporal loom. They need to make the rings bigger to get more branches. But there is a huge problem. The level of radiation in this area is extremely terrible. What is hard to have, Loki and Mobius confidently recommend the god to take the mission. Before the action, they need to integrate bandwidth. People go out so that the two scientists shook hands to work. Mobius then said to make a piece of cake. Sylvie immediately opposed that the battle for the temporal loom could not wait. She criticized Mobius to die to the ass and had a mood. Or, for him, a line of time disappearing is also normal. The millions of lives there are any reason, right? Mobius speechless and could not counter any sentences. The god of tricks is not floating at this time. B-15 went to the cell to meet the female general. Knowing she also wanted to protect TVA, so she relied on help. Outside, Sylvie is regretting letting Victor Timely live. She is afraid a catastrophic ending will happen. Better to destroy everything and then rebuild than repair and make this world distorted. Loki has to finish his piece with his ability. We were originally what this was. Ravonna, thanks to the help of the watch that had entered the prison, convinced the general. To entice Ravonna, the member offered an attractive reward. Anyone who participates will be free when the job is done. If you want to live in any time, you don't need to stay in TVA. Seeing that the general wondered, the clock immediately started the torture. The cube locked all of them except for X5. It narrowed, but Mo1 made a complaint. Having been a general of the general, it must be like that. B-15 entered the room without believing what was in front of her. She hurriedly took the stamp to contact, but the clock disabled access. OB also realized the interference of Miss Minutes. The group hurried out to find Victor Timely. However, there was only a cup of coffee on the floor. Loki said Ravonna has not left here because what she needs is TVA. As expected, X5 is escorting Victor Timely to meet Ravonna in the secret room. The clock is responsible for holding Loki's group. The temporal loom has reached the limit. See, alarm rang the most printed warning. This is the prospect of the future that Loki has seen. Holding the tempad synchronized in his hand, he went to the elevator to find Sylvie. Then, surprised from the back, pushed the instrument of his traveling away to play cool. The nearby phone rang. Loki and Sylvie screamed and asked him to turn off the security system of the headquarters. Miss Minutes gradually lost awareness. Before the variant, Victor Timely emphasized he will never become him. X5 was ordered to be guarded by Loki. He returned to the room in a temporary state, pruning Ravonna. To another time, Victor Timely immediately returned to help OB. Loki took the courage to put his inlet on the scanner. The system has identified the variant. However, that is only the first step in repair. Victor Timely must wear a radiation suit outside the pressure area. The door just opened, he was immediately erased by temporal radiation. The group gasped and did not know what happened. Sylvie concluded Victor Timely died, and everything ended here. The temporal loom began to explode before everyone's helplessness. Loki has closed his eyes and waited for how to live. The person twisted the god again with time for playing Toad. At the headquarters, he took the handbook of TVA outside someone. Hello, then disappeared. The surrounding scenery began to change. The string of temporal radiation stretched made Loki extremely scared. He hurriedly pruned himself with the handbook and was taken to a place far away. The scene moved to 1962 at the branch duration. Some prisoners were running away. Loki appeared. Mr. Thawne called Casey, but he didn't recognize acquaintances. Just ate a few stories, Loki immediately moved. Tired of his ears, but he could not resist. He met B-15 in 2012 and she was a doctor.
Then jump until 2022. Mobius is now close to the sky but still passionate about sports. Somewhere, OB became a science fiction novelist. However, his book has no one to buy. As soon as he came home, Loki suddenly appeared. OB fell back. However, due to the head of the electricity, he believed all the things Loki said. Still knowing about the temporal loom? When Loki said he wanted to return before the loom was destroyed, OB replied naturally that it couldn't be because it did not exist. But OB still cheered Loki trying to control everything. Highly focused and aiming for the purpose to do. It sounds bad, but Loki also follows. He spread his hand mumbling his man, but trying to go anywhere. OB unexpectedly took the end of the electric injection for Loki the most. It turned out that electric injection also did not cause time failure. The startled style also does not work. Loki had to deceive it aside to follow the scientific clues. OB held a cup of pens. He assumed that each of them was a friend of Loki. They themselves have a certain time. Now, if they gather all of them again, it will be able to analyze that collective presence. It is like the coordinates so that we can come to the place. However, doing that needs a tempad stamp. If starting from 0, OB may take a lifetime. Loki missed the book he brought. He just gave it to OB when he was moved to another place. In front of his eyes, Mobius is rushing with 2 children. Loki greeted and they continued to talk about the story before. Loki told Mobius his real name and life in TVA. Of course, he doesn't understand what the hell. At that moment, OB moved. Before the crazy scene, Mobius did not speak. But he still bluntly refused Loki's help. The trickster will bring Mobius back at any time. At the same time, warns this time is in danger. If not acting immediately, all will be erased, including his relatives. Just like that, Loki goes all over the time gathering old friends. From B-15 to Casey, the indispensable person is Sylvie. Loki was quite surprised when she had all the previous memories. No need for him to explain, she knows the current situation. However, Sylvie wants to have a life and enjoy it. This incident happened was also a 2. Those who die, they still have a line of time to exist. Loki tried to convince Sylvie that he wanted to save TVA, not really because billions of people disappeared, but simply wanting friends to come back, to let them have the right to choose to live in TVA or their current home. Sylvie criticized Loki. "You are also as selfish as me." In essence, he was afraid of loneliness to try so hard. Everyone has their own life, and now he is the same. Write your own life page. Loki did not object to anything. Sylvie finished his wine back sadly. The first sentence she said was not to mind anymore. Go to everyone's house. That night, the time in Sylvie at the beginning of the vanish, she had to witness her friend evaporate right before her eyes. Before itself is affected. Sylvie must open the space door to Loki. She informed everyone that the time branches were gradually collapsing. Although you don't know what is happening, Sylvie thinks that it is necessary to act right before it is too late. Loki was happy to inform OB everyone was full. However, he could not do anything. Each member disappeared. Even Sylvie has no place to go. Loki tried to hold on, but it seemed all hopeless. He screamed and returned a few seconds ago. Loki then focused on the desire in his mind. He succeeded in returning to the time Sylvie just arrived. Loki was happy to notify OB that he had control over time slipping. Now the god is confident that he can rewrite everything. No more waiting, Loki returned to the time Victor Timely repaired the temporal loom. However, the scenario he was erased still inevitably happened. Loki continued to return again. Before Victor Timely acted, he showed him the details of how to do it, also emphasizing it must be done quickly. However, it is still the same outcome despite trying. Victor Timely just walked through the door and had not been erased in time. Mr. Tan forced to try at different times, talking so much that Loki misses every detail. He explained that all of them kept all their faces. Everyone feels like Loki is a time-making time. Victor Timely and OB were turned into 2 Levay. He said what he couldn't understand the situation. Just like that, Loki took control. In every stage, he tried to adjust his uncle as possible. Finally, Victor Timely's outfit has radioactive pressure. He Levay gradually approached the launch pad. After continuous efforts, he successfully pressed the green button. Loki was happy this time. He urged Victor Timely to return before being erased. But they have not been happy for how long. OB again announced the variable. Despite increasing the capacity, there are still too many branches. The temporal loom once again falls into an overload. Victor Timely observes the phenomenon and realizes they are duplicating themselves. The growth time of growth at infinite speed. The loom will never be able to meet such a multiverse because no one can adjust an infinite thing. It is like we do not calculate the number of 0 division. Understanding this, Loki is extremely desperate. He sat down and mumbled like a crazy guy. The loom quickly exploded in front of the group. Lightning letter destroyed again Tai Trang. Knowing that it is impossible to correct the mistake when the time is too late, Loki decided to return to the day Sylvie killed He Who Remains. However, no matter what he said, she
did not believe it. Hundreds of times, Loki used a time slip, and the result was still the same. Finally, He Who Remains just flicked his hand for the time of Sylvie to stop. Looking at Loki's bewildered gesture, he smiled sarcastically.
Bao Ang is a chicken when he does not know how to stop time when needed. Then he flicked his hand to see Sylvie away. For the first time, He Who Remains talked kindly with Loki. It turned out he knew about the temporal loom failure, and is also known about the incident. However, he still kept calm. The temporal loom only destroys unnecessary branches, and the sacred timeline will always exist. However, Loki still does not want that to happen because other timelines have his friends. Although He Who Remains emphasizes this equation only has one answer, Loki is still determined to change everything. He returned when Mobius brought him to TVA to interrogate. After the short conversation, Loki understood his burden. He returned when the time branch was being destroyed. Standing in front of Sylvie, performing the skills to stop lingering on the trip. He told her the loom was just a backup plan. It only has the ability to protect the sacred timeline. Wanting other timelines to exist, the only way is that Sylvie must not kill He Who Remains. Hearing that, she understood the problem but remained determined not to change his actions. Each travel through thousands of days of apocalypse, Sylvie understands what the destruction means. No god has the right to impose thoughts and lifestyles on people because their existence is completely meaningless. Loki listened and pondered Sylvie's words. He decided to return to the time of repairing the loom. This time, he decided that he would be the one to go out without protective equipment, using his powerful magic to destroy the loom before it exploded. Heavy steps for Loki to move. The loom appeared before his eyes. His hands clenched the timelines that were fading. He flew up immediately. A blue light appeared to form a shimmering tree. Finally, Loki chose to become the god of stories. All the timelines are protected. Mobius decided to leave TVA. He visited another version of himself where a Mobius was playing with two sons. Sylvie is also there. They feel missed because of the lack of Loki's appearance. But now he was able to smile, standing in a place to observe his friends happy. And that is also the end of the Season 2 Loki. How do you feel about the two series? Leave your opinion below so I know. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Bye!